Good morning, everyone. It is Tuesday, the 24th of July. It's Justins versus Hustings. Proclamation News and Gatherence versus LBC News. You're inside Professor Johnson home headquarters. Today we have politic updates. Please stay tuned. This can be extraordinary, absolutely. We can start off on a problematic simple life biography. Firstly, I'd like to thank YouTube for absolute exaggerated, profoundly extremist of sharing my cast. It's extraordinary and really valuable to share with the community at large. Problematic simple life and biography. Wisdomology on Professor Johnson babyhood. Justin Johnson, 1983, age 35. I was born and raised in Clacton-on-Sea. All my life, growing up, from a young age, I remember becoming the most loved child, becoming not the most loved child, but regardless, I found myself, although not becoming the so-called loved child, a very peculiar, flamboyant child. Very independent. I hated noise, arguments. My mum and dad and sister had. I found myself always to blame for many. I found myself always to blame for many tragedies that happened via my older sister's incidents. She's a wonderful woman, sister. Don't get me wrong. We was raised in a little town flat in Clacton-on-Sea, in Leeds Road. She made a slide down from the window ledge, a three-seater sofa, when I was around the age of 3 in 1986. I was born in 1983. Yep, I could barely walk or talk back then. Bang, crash, wallop. She fell back into the window. Yes, it smashed. I could barely walk, let alone smash a window. Guess who was to blame? Yep, you're looking at me now. Absolutely. It's times like this when you begin to realise flamboyant is not a great gift or attitude or outset to have in today's modern world. She was becoming very cunning, optimistic. She was set out to destroy me. Yes, Jamie Rebecca Johnson, if you're listening, my wonderful sister. Yeah, the same to you, but not in a harmful way. A beautiful, smart daughter to my mum and dad, sister to me. How could you do anything wrong in life? Don't get me wrong, I love her with all my heart. We talk daily, sometimes weekly. She's a great mother of 2, my niece Elsie and lovely nephew Bailey. Always making sure they don't go about, like every other mother's dream, to bring their children up into a life that's full of treats and gifts. My upbringing wasn't the worst, but quite frankly wasn't the best neither. I was taught the hard way, of which I believe has made me who I am today. As a young fellow pup, I enjoyed sport, i.e. football and athletics, also video games. I was brought up not to prevail against a community of corruption, to be guarded away from troublesome kids and gangs, but for some strange reason it began to find me. Starting from the age of 17, I found women and put my football career aside, gained a girlfriend. I was brought up like no other. I always sought independence so I could reconcile my habilitations of the highest equity. No, it didn't quite go to plan. It was when you start to realise you put a strain to your life to control forbearance becomes to your mindset and goals. Throughout my whole entire upbringing in today's society, you learn the best comes out of you when you're independent. Back in 2004, I got into a relationship for 15 years. We had kids, got married in 2017. Since that day, trouble elapsed and progressed into independent again. Being single the day the odd provocation came to task, but becoming more flamboyant and both optimistic, I solved the problematic. I sit here today with a business development with its teleological, fruitful, thoughtful process of proclamation, news and gatherance, and also my artwork. A year ago today, I was a slave in Casbah restaurant. That's why I've begun to realise my body has taken its toll via secondary Raynaud's disease phenomenon. Don't get me wrong, it's a job, and very nice consumers. The restaurant and hotel was amazing. I knew I had more in life to give, having the intellect and history and geography and media studies. No more problematics, high gains, high controls, making sure people take on board alcohol and narcotics are the destroyer of humanity. Causing domestic abuse, many tragic deaths via violence, stabbings, beatings, car control and sleep deprivation. We've got now we've got Professor Johnson on the front bench editor. This is Justins versus Hustings, so let's enjoy from Proclamation News and Gatherence. Pure blissful for the patriots, conservatives in today's politics. Its parents has prolongedly awaited for the new Conservative Prime Minister. It's always extraordinary news. Johnson lines up a new cabinet as Hammond and others plan to resign. I'm not surprised in Philip Hammond resigning. He insisted national minimum wage to uprise, of which it hasn't seen any sign of negotiations set in stone. It's prolonged awaits at 5 p.m. today, which is it's all sorted out already. The ballot will close, bearing in mind a major stock is now a question of how big a victory Boris Johnson secure. Usually with a new Prime Minister enters Downing Street, they do so with a fair amount of goodwill and time to try and hit the ground of running. Not so with Johnson. It's a rough start to life. A dozen or so ministers will probably have resigned rather than serve under him. He is unlikely to go to see the Queen tomorrow with his cabinet, which is meaning today. I read this yesterday. Meanwhile, will be critical why Johnson hasn't wanted to be seen measuring up the curtains, although he has reportedly asked the taxpayer to buy him furniture, as his ex-wife, has always transitions to his equity. She's taken him, being partially ex-married. We know little of his plans, but the balance of his cabinet will be crucial. Hardline Brexiteers are worried that they will once again be outnumbered, but whatever the precise balance, is unlikely to be a happy one. So coming October, Johnson will either be driving for a hard deal or rowing back on the biggest promise that pretty much guarantees resignations in autumn. I've actually got great. I think he's actually going to do a great job, to be honest. He's got 35 years at the realm. Why people keep mocking his criteria, I do not know. He's very, very forcefully intelligent, and he does deserve the praise that we should give him. How can we manage the impact or a divorce? A divorce is a country western song, typical of the genre. It's pure tearjerker material, with Tammy Wynette top charts with the song in 1968. It was celebrated for bringing a mother's perspective to her family's breakup via the vintage parenting trick of spelling out the words in the hope that children would understand. So soon to be single mother spells out divorce, hell and custody to protect her 4-year-old son from the pain of his parents' breakup. Quite a few have been asking about divorce, and it's surprising. Well, doing quite a lot of divorcing. The latest official statistics, divorce rates have been increasing. It's very, very important, a divorce in this modern society, to stop domestic abuse and violence. Absolutely, you've got to thrive, happiness, independence if you need it. And that rates are highest among men aged 45 to 49 and among women in their 30s, ages 30 to 39. The biggest growth area in recent years is among over 50s. In other words, you are not alone, even if it may feel that way, and inevitably children of various ages are affected by family breakups. The average duration of a marriage at the time of divorce was just over 12 years, so it's something we need to think about. Do you stay together for the kids, or do you not? How do you talk to children about the fundamental shift in your family? Of course, today we know a bit more honesty and openness, and why Wynette's song suggests is required, both with you and your partner, and with your children, whatever their age. It's very, very important stop the domestic trust issues and everything else in a relationship. Call for help. A divorce and separation are issues come up to regularly on the Parents Helpline at Young Minds. The Children's Mental Health Charity often has one several factors that are putting pressure on a child. So Jack Purnell, driver, a team leader for the helpline, send this advice for parents going through divorce or separation. All young people respond differently to their parents separating and may feel denial, anger or anxiety at the thought of the family setup changing to avoid longer term emotional distress. A lot of families need support in this. Parents must keep communication open with young person about what's going out during the separation. It is to make the most of children to ask questions and their parents to respond to them honestly and in an age operation manner. Children of all ages will need to do. It's not their fault and they are still loved by both parents. But it's cautious that in worrying for your children and should not neglect yourself. Parents also need to look after themselves when going through a difficult time and be mindful to keep conflict between themselves to a minimum. Conflict can be extremely difficult for young people to witness and can create divides with the family unit. For more information, you can check on visit the Young Minds website here and give them a ring for advice. It gives you a lot of advice for separation, how to go about proacting with your kids, keeping them happy and at bay. Some people need to ring them, seek advice. Best case scenario divorce. Over the weekend I admired this call out from Swansea based barrister on Twitter whose ex-husband has been diagnosed with dementia. Joanne Wood and one tweeted, struggling, my ex-husband whom I found divorced 25 years ago very amicably has been diagnosed with vascular dementia. That's because women try to take the PR away from the fellas, absolutely, and he's probably done his braining. I want to help him because he's the father of our fab children, now adults. Any advice, please retweet. I don't have many followers. People contributed practical financial tips, advice on support grounds for dementia, and thoughts on how helpful it was for them as children that their divorced parents had continued to rally together in times of crisis or times of joy, of course. That's always possible, but you can, it's a great help. Wish your times of joy, it's like Christmas, birthdays, things like that. So using your initiative, thinking forward in the think tank. Finally, if you're a grown woman struggling in an unhappy relationship for a bit of light relief and sometimes harsh truths in the middle age of malaise, I'd highly recommend reading Taffy Brodessia Ackner's new novel Fisherman is in the Trouble, set in contemporary New York. This week's question, what can you do about sport in state schools? The sport in state schools. So we have networking and a better Oxford. Changes are often touted as reasons to send a child to private school. Increasingly I'm worried that the poor PE report card from the state sector is really letting children down. Fitness is like a skill that we're woefully poor at teaching. Diana Asher-Smith, the British sprinter, wrote an excellent piece this week about the misguided move by schools that cut PE lessons because it was exam pressures last year. She writes, at 16 years old, students are down to just 34 minutes of physical activity at school per week. So it's very, very important to listening daily, take on board the acknowledgement, be encouraged, initiate a fraction of Chief Medical Officer guidelines at 60 minutes a day. You can read their full article. And let me know about your child's school. You can tell me about your child's school. How can we proact with the school? I can write into your school, try and redevelop their PE times. If you find your kids lacking in fitness, which doesn't help your mind proact into modern day society, it's important to kids do after school activities, but not taking too much away from education. 1 to 2 hours weekly minimum, absolutely. Are you content with the level of physical education? Do you see improvement in your children, their fitness, their forbearance for studying? Boris Johnson is the next Prime Minister, so what happens now? What's going to happen now when Boris Johnson takes the limelight? For me, it's going to be a safer Britain all the way throughout. While Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister, strikes a different note from Boris, the candidate. He's got a great, I think he's going to have a great cabinet lineup. So now Dublin plays a waiting game to see if Boris Prime Minister strikes a different note from Boris, the candidate. Working with the Irish as well is magnificent for me. During the Tory leadership campaign, Johnson repeatedly demanded that the backstop be abandoned and the withdrawal agreement. The only way the UK leaves with a deal be written accordingly. I think so. He's got a good evidence for a backup story. I think it's going to happen. I really think Brexit's going to happen. I thought Boris was going to take Prime Minister role in November. I had a funny feeling that Theresa May might leave. I don't know why, and it's happened. During the Tory leadership campaign, Johnson repeatedly demanded that the backstop be abandoned by the withdrawal agreement. The only way that UK is a deal will be written accordingly. Private signals from Brussels and Dublin have been made abundantly clear. This is out of the question for the EU. So if Johnson continues with the campaign rhetoric, we will be on course for a no deal. The two sides not just apart but miles away from one another, and no compromise possible. If it happens, the focus will shift in Westminster, where anti-no deal MPs, including many of its own party, have pledged their strength in Parliament to block a cash-out exit in the end of October. Johnson only after a wafer majority, when he counts all the MPs in his party and supporters. Which one is the issue? He cannot. It's not certain that MPs can strong-arm the government into taking action that will avoid a no deal in the House of Commons. And remember, a no deal is the difficult position. In nothing else happens. The UK leaves without a deal on October the 31st. But there's always a nuclear button if a no confident motion, and some government source in Dublin citing contacts in London believe Tory rebels will destroy Johnson's government before acquiescing in a no deal. So if Johnson strikes a course for a no deal, it will be a long shot in September. Dublin and Brussels will stand by. The action will be at Westminster. I'm hoping to attend in the next several weeks. The other possibilities is that Johnson will pivot and seek accommodation to which the EU could possibly agree. What sort of tweak to the withdrawal agreement that would be has not been worked out yet. Some sources in Dublin are deeply sceptical that it is even impossible. But others believe clearly in Johnson's interest to leave the deal, that he will at least try to reach compromise with the EU. The new Prime Minister's early comments and speech will be parsed carefully, as will composition on his cabinet, for the signs about which direction he will choose. Secretary of State. There is no further related consideration that Dublin will be watching closely in coming days. Rumours at the weekend in the UK press suggested that Johnson was considering making Michael Gove his Secretary of State in Northern Ireland. If he does, which is good, it will cause significant concern to Dublin in the direction of Johnson's policy towards the north. I think Mr Gove would do good. I've got a good mate called Mr Gove in Clacton-on-Sea back home, so it would be good for them to work together. Gove opposed a Good Friday Agreement to continue to condemn as a shabble Moroccan promised with a terrorist organisation long after it bedded down. Well done, Mr Gove. With the prospect of a direct rule from Westminster in London as a consequence of a no-deal Brexit, Gove appointment at Hillsborough Castle would suggest that Irish government and Conservative alliance with the DUP will go beyond the requirements of parliamentary exegesis. However, some Irish officials suspect the leak was mischievous intent to put Gove, who has famously betrayed Johnson during the 2016 leadership election, but has lately declared his loyalty. On the back foot, the Northern Ireland job is considered the most cabinet aspirants as one to be avoided. Johnson did not share Gove's anti-agreement views, in fact supported it at times when his newspaper The Daily Telegraph was wrongly opposed, but there is little evidence of the substantial interest of the North on his part. His approach for the North certain to be shaped to Brexit as long as replies of DUP at Westminster. Life change is likely, he says. He may even reappoint Calvin Bradley as Northern Secretary, some rumours are suggested. However, some Irish officials suspect the leak with mischievous intent to put Gove, who famously betrayed Johnson during the 2016 leadership election, but was later declared his loyalty on the back foot. Northern Ireland job is considered to be by most British cabinet aspirants as one to be avoided. Johnson did not share Gove's anti-agreement views. In fact, he supported it at the time when his newspaper, The Daily Telegraph, was strongly opposed, but there is a little evidence on substantial interest of North on his part. His approach of the North is certain to be shaped by Brexit. As long as he relies on the DUP support Westminster, little change is likely. He may even reappoint Kevin Bradley as Northern Ireland Secretary, some would suggest. Which Boris Johnson will be the new Prime Minister proved to be carefully curated persona is not the man Conservative MPs say will reveal himself once in power. Boris Johnson wins the culmination over 3 years of whispering the corridors of Westminster about his ambitions. Conservative Party members make up a fraction of 1% of UK electorate, but today they overwhelmingly choose Boris Johnson, the grassroots darling, the figurehead of the 2016 Brexit campaign, as Britain's next Prime Minister. How he is viewed by others, more than 99% of the voting public, will depend on the key questions. The first defining question as former Foreign Secretary takes over is, will be able to shepherd the UK out of the EU, bringing the first stage of Brexit to its conclusion as his predecessor failed to do, can be by the meeting of Brexit deadline October 31st, treated as an article of faith during the leadership contest, off of the fresh start Tories burn for with a working majority down to the single figures. It will be a challenge to secure the vote for an amended deal. If Parliament decides to block a government decision to walk away without a deal, Johnson will be facing an early general election, which, if he loses, would usher the third Prime Minister next year. It's not going to happen. He's got 36 years at the wheel. Everyone's backing him, supporting him, and it's going to be a Brexit. 100%, believe me, mark my words. Johnson's win on Tuesday by 92,000 to 153 votes to marginally massive amounts, 46,656 votes over his challenger Jeremy Hunt, is the communication of 3 years of whispering in the corridors of Westminster about his ambition to take over from Theresa May. So it speaks in volumes. He triumphed in 2016 leadership race, in which Johnson's own campaign imploded. May then fought a disastrous general election the following year, in which she lost the Tories party slim majority. She then failed to bring a Brexit deal negotiated with the EU approved the House of Commons, confronted by rebels on her own side, including Johnson. This and so much else depends on a second and rather intriguing question: which Johnson will the new Prime Minister reveal himself to be as he takes over from May on Wednesday afternoon? The ongoing Premier will stay in post for 1 day in order to appear on a farewell Prime Minister questions. The character on the show and the leadership election was Boris was also spearheaded to leave the campaign, bashfully optimistic when pressed on the details of changes of Brexit, liable to a sudden compromise of spending splurges and reversal of Tory policy, and unfazed by the facts when his assertions prove unfounded. This man brandished a kipper to falsely make a point about UK regulations. But this carefully curated persona is not the same man Conservative MPs and the commentators will reveal himself once in power. The Prime Minister Johnson are at pains to reassure an moderate Tory as a one nation tradition, socially liberal and committed to an infrastructure investment policy to promote economic growth. This is a Johnson who was a mayor of London, secured the support of voters across the political spectrum and welcomed immigrants from the EU and beyond the capital. This is the politician who waved a brick at the Tory faithful during a conference speech in 2014 calling for the big house building programme. Now we've got the Blitz briefings for the morning. Media promised a Blitz domestic policy announcements to be unveiled immediately as Johnson's premiership would not be defined solely by Brexit. The rebellious Remain or a soft Brexit mind Tory MPs meanwhile warned overnight that promising or rather threatening a no-deal Brexit will alienate moderate voters. Analysis of the European elections bear of this point, but while some of the cheerleaders are preparing the ground for brick welding, Johnson defeat the kipper welding Boris. The warning from Tory rebels, who will not include the powerful figure of Philip Hammond, the outgoing Chancellor, signals unavoidable trouble. Johnson cannot easily specify the Commons and the country with one nation agenda, while is on the course of honour is a no-deal promise to the Tory grassroots and, crucially, the Brexit hardline MPs who made life so difficult. We have President Trump, the legislator, laying down the law. Trump sues to block New York law allowing Congress to get his state taxes. President Donald Trump on Tuesday filed a lawsuit seeking to prevent the House Ways and Means Committee from obtaining his state tax returns through a newly passed New York law. The president lawyers said the new state was nothing more than an effort to get information about his personal finances to embarrass him politically. The suit referred to an NBC News article on Monday that said Ways and Means Chairman Richard Neal Demas was under pressure to fellow Democrats to make sure the new law. The suit asks the court to provide a declaratory judgment that the committee lacks a legitimate legislative purpose for obtaining the president's state tax information. President Trump broke with tradition by refusing to release his tax returns as a candidate or as a president. The lawsuit asserts that the law called the Trust Act violates Trump's First Amendment rights. It seeks to block the Ways Means Committee for being able to question taxes through the law, prevent New York Attorney General Letitia James from enforcing it, and stop New York Department from Taxation and Finance Commissioner Michael Schmidt from accompanying with any request for Trump's tax filings. The House rules authorise a committee to oversee federal laws, not state tax laws, and the suit filed in the US Direct Court of the District of Columbia, and nothing in the House of Rules allows the committee to demand the private financial information of a sitting president. The president is personal attorney Jay Sekulow said in a statement the lawsuit was filed as a part of the ongoing efforts to the presidential harassment. The target of the president by the House Ways and Means Committee, the New York Attorney General and the New York officials violates Article 1 of the US Constitution. He said the harassment attacks lack of legitimate legislative purpose. The New York law allows the chairman of the Congressional Tax-Related Committee, the House Ways and Means Committee, Senate Finance Committee, the Joint Committee and Taxation. The request to the state returns to public officials after the efforts to gain access to federal tax fillings through the Treasury Department have failed. Neal is the only Democratic who can use the law. The legislation states that any legitimate tax on the Congress a valid reason to make a request should efforts obtain returns to the federal level of a stonewalled by the Treasury Department. New York state the taxes identical for the federal returns but obtains much of the same information. I have every confidence that the President's legal change will fail the New York standing over the support of Congress's inside the taxes. Assemblyman David Buckwood, a Democratic who sponsored the legislation, said in a statement, "It's not surprised the President has moved so quickly in an attempt to strike down New York's tax transparency law as he was fighting release tax returns on every front. The bill signed into law this month and was written broadly and makes it easier for New York to turn over the tax returns of certain public officials to Congress." Then we have President Trump has spent his career behind lawsuits, but the New York Chief Law Enforcement Officer, I can assure him that no one is above the law, not even the President of the United States. James said in a statement, the Trust Act will shine in a light of President's financing, finally of a transparency of millions to Americans yearning to know the truth. We all have confidence that the law is legal and we will vigorously defend it against any challenge. Neil said last month he wouldn't use the law to request the state returns because he feels it could harm his attempt to get in the federal filings. Neil sued the Internal Revenue Service and Treasury Department for those citing a section of tax law. The state's Treasury Secretary shall furnish the congressional tax committees any return or return information requested by its chairman. The stated purpose of Neil's request to review the IRS process for auditing presidential returns. Earlier this month, Neil said the council was reviewing the law and had some legitimate concerns regarding it. But he is under pressure of Democrats to act by the Democratic member of Ways and Means told the NBC News report on Monday. There's been whispered frustration from members of the committee at slow and process and how the process has moved. We respect his focus on moving rapidly on healthcare, tax and pensions, but at the same time many of us have tried to express a sense of urgency which we and our constituents feel about enforcing the law, obtaining Trump's tax returns, and we just haven't seen these sense of urgency reflect over the past 6 months. The aide added, Rep. Bill Parcell, DNG, other Ways and Means members expressed openness to using the New York, saying he appreciated New York legislator and Gov. Andrew Cuomo were trying to accomplish. We try to investigate any tool providing us that might see sunlight and Trump's tax return history, including tax reporting practices as a result of any IRS audits. Pasquale said, Trump broke with decades of tradition by refusing to release returns while running for the presidency, claiming he was under audit. Such an audit would never preclude him from releasing the returns. However, a president's returns undergo IRS audits annually. So hot. Then we got Proclamation news and Gatherence. It's time for showbiz, and that'll be all for today on Hustings versus Hustings. It's time for showbiz. What is Casey Price been up to? That's what I'd like to know. Maybe baby. Kay Price and Chris Boyson trying for twins as they film visit to the IVF clinic for a reality show. She doesn't look too bad for her age. I can't mock her. Kay Price is trying to get pregnant with twins, and Wesley visited the IVF clinic with her boyfriend Chris Boyson. Reality TV show as secret film at a central London clinic where a TV show My Crazy Life, where she consults experts on getting pregnant with 2 babies. And insiders say the scene will feature the next series on the show. The source said everyone was pretty shocked when Katie announced she wanted to have 2 kids at 4 to 1 because he and Chris are so off and on. But it seems the only thing to agree is starting a family. Katie took reality TV crew and come along with consultation, and cameras were in appointment with her. Chris sparked rumours she was pregnant earlier this month when Chris posed when his hand was on her stomach. She made no secret wanting more kids and says they're getting pregnant when Chris can only make their relationship better. Kate's publicist had no commitment when contacted by her son online. Kate and ex-wife Kieran, and then Junior, Harvey, Honey, Jet and Princess. Kate was whose son Harvey 17 with Dwight York Princess, and Junior 14 with Peter Andre, and Bunny 4 and Jet 5 with Kieran Hayler, has spoken about her desire to expand her family. Before, in her most episodes, she left Chris terrified and he misheard her calling him her sick baby and thought she was pregnant. She also made intentions towards Chris earlier this year. She posted the hashtag babies, marriage and a loved up pic of them. However, the wedding will have to wait, as technically Katie's married to her estranged Kieran. Katie is planning a sick baby in 2017 when she's still with Kieran. In scenes where Kieran and her daughter Princess were clearing out Katie's mucky mansion and throwing away baby toys, she demanded and having another baby or not, to which her daughter Princess instantly said yes. Katie questioned them again, saying, "No, seriously, what? Another baby or not?" Both Kieran and Princess said yes. She continues, "So if you're having a baby, do we need to keep it?" To which Kieran insisted yes. Just keep. So they split up just months after. That is all on Proclamation News and Gatherence on Justins versus Hustings. Also, Proclamation News versus LBC News. We're doing daily live feeds on YouTube and Castbox. Stay tuned. It's never a provocation for me, maybe for the others that were battling against them. And for us, we're giving it evidence. I can emphasise, I can sing as well. Amazingly gospel songs. So you can check, subscribe. Make sure you tune in daily for daily updates. Thank you very much for watching in.